Joining us now, super excited for this conversation, Edward Kovalik, who is the chairman and CEO of the Prayer Operating Group, and we've been talking about his stuff for a while. It's oilfacts.com. Edward, great to see you. So much to discuss. Thank you for joining the program. You are an energy truth teller. First, let's just talk geopolitical, and then we'll go a little bit more specific. What are the stakes of America and Russia meeting today? Russia being one of the biggest producers of petroleum on the planet. Please, Edward, welcome to the program and walk us through the geopolitical stakes of what's happening today.
First of all, Charlie, it's great to be with you. I'm a huge fan, and what you do is just so important. If anyone is not aware of this, fossil fuels basically drive the entire global economy and as a result drive geopolitics. Russia is really a petrostate, an extractive state whose primary line of business is producing oil and minerals, and essentially an influential member of OPEC Plus. So, to President Trump's credit, he's been really eagle-eyed on keeping oil prices low to manage real costs for everyday Americans. And that's why I think you've seen the White House be a little bit light-handed on really exerting maximum pressure on Russia. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with respect to these negotiations and if President Trump really uses that final, trump card, so to speak, against Russia geopolitically with respect to Ukraine, because President Trump has really hesitated up until now to do that.
Has global demand for fossil fuels or petroleum gone up or down in the last 5 years?
So just to set the record straight, demand for energy and specifically fossil fuels has gone up every year since the beginning of the implementation of fossil fuels. If you go back to the early 20th century and look at sort of the world pre-fossil fuels up till today, you'll see pretty much a straight line up and to the right linearly with demand growth every year. The only stutters in that growth have been the 07-08 credit crisis, and then we saw demand bounce right back thereafter. And then we saw another pause in demand growth during COVID when we were all forced to stay in our homes for over a year. And then you saw demand growth come right back. And so, that's really no mystery, since even with all the talk about renewable energy, as it's called, replacing fossil fuels still account for 60% of electricity generation in this country, a greater share in most other countries, and really are part of everything that we use in our daily lives. Everything that surrounds us in our daily lives is made from fossil fuels.
The energy battle shaping our future is not just about fuel, it is about survival nations' rise and fall on the back of oil and gas. And the truth has been hidden for too long. We are told to embrace solar and wind, but the reality is different. The world still runs on fossil fuels and will continue to do so for decades ahead. What you are about to hear is not the usual polished narrative. It is raw. It is direct. It is about the stakes of energy geopolitics, from Russia to America to every home in between. This conversation will break illusions and show why energy is power in its purest form. So listen closely, because the lies of a so-called green future are about to be challenged, and the truth is not what the mainstream wants you to believe.
Yeah, and so I asked for a reason, because we were told 10 years ago that there's going to be a green energy push and that we're going to divest ourselves from fossil fuels. How's that working? We were told that we had peak oil, that we're going to have solar panels and windmills, and it was this very utopian vision. What's the truth?
Well, the truth is that there is no energy transition. There's only energy addition. Nearly half the world is still energy poor and consume about the amount of energy that your refrigerator does on a per capita basis for an entire family. So most of the world is trying to pull themselves out of, energy starvation. And, in that same period of time, as we've seen demand for oil rather grow linearly since the early 1900s, we've also seen people live a lot longer as a result of all the things that fossil fuels have enabled. We've also seen tremendous prosperity and record numbers of people coming out of poverty. I think global poverty is now down from about 42% in 1980 to less than 10% today. And so this whole idea that we can transition from fossil fuels to solar and wind for our primary source of energy is really just foolish and a lie, because solar and wind are extremely inefficient, extremely low energy dense, and completely uneconomic. And were it not for extreme government subsidies up to date, we probably see much less solar and wind actually developed around the world.
And you can learn more about this at oilfacts.com. I'm actually on the website right now. It's oilfacts.com. And you have this amazing thing, 10 energy truths in the age of AI. So there's been several predictions made by the kind of climate core. Is it would you say this is a decivilizational movement, the environmentalist? Is that the undercurrent? Is that the reason they have such gusto?
Absolutely. If you just go through a logical progression of facts here, cutting off energy supply to create energy scarcity is a path towards starvation, not towards promoting human flourishing. And that's really, the only logical outcome, particularly in a time where we're seeing real stress in the West on electrical grids as a result of AI-driven data center growth that's projected to double between now and 2030. Really on a grid in this country that dates back, on average to the 1970s. It's really arcane and needs a tremendous amount of investment. And so with this aging grid, limited distribution capability, AI data centers are going to hog all incremental power supplied to the grid, which is really going to leave Americans left out in the cold, and could lead to a scenario where we see energy rationing in this country, which again leads to poverty, because we know for a fact that access to abundant and affordable energy is the number one variable correlated to both human longevity and prosperity.
Yeah, and so the decivilizational component is incredibly important. Everyone could check it out at oilfacts.com. But so we are all marveling at artificial intelligence. We're marveling at what it can do. I mean, some of us are a little terrified, to be honest. But to connect the dots, why does energy and fossil fuels, why is that a key ingredient?
We are told that demand is falling. We are told that fossil fuels are dying. We are told that the future is renewable. Yet every chart, every number, every trend says otherwise. Fossil fuel demand has not only held strong, it has risen year after year through crises, recessions, and even a global pandemic. The truth is that energy poverty still chains half the world. And without oil and gas, billions will remain in darkness. The fantasy of peak oil was sold like gospel, yet reality has crushed it every single time. What we see now is not transition, it is addition. Renewable energy piles on top, but never replaces the core, and that core is fossil fuel.
With the AI revolution, you can't have one without the other. I want to tell you about something that shook me. There's a 17-year-old girl named Kayla. She's pregnant, scared, and alone, and she thinks abortion is her only option. But then someone offers her an ultrasound. No lecture, no judgment, and she sees her baby. Here's the heartbeat and everything changes. That sound, it's not just a heartbeat, it's the sound of hope, of purpose, of life. Kayla chose life, and here's the key, it didn't stop there. Preborn provided that ultrasound, and then they stayed. They stood by Kayla with counseling, baby clothes and diapers, even housing when she needed it. For 2 years, because real pro-life work means loving moms and not just saving babies. Her son Gabriel came into the world surrounded by love, not shame. Last year, 67,000 moms made that same choice because of Preborn. Just $28 covers one ultrasound, one moment that could change everything. Go to preborn.com/Charlie or click on the link in the description or call 855-601-2229. Don't just believe in life, fight for it. Preborn.com/Charlie.
Well, for one, it's as simple as AI data centers use a tremendous amount of power. Training one single AI model uses as much energy as electricity we need to supply 100 homes in a year. So it's just a staggering amount of electrical demand. AI is going to require every ounce of electrons we can possibly spare to power these data centers. So the sad irony is that people have been led to believe this lie because I think people genuinely want to be virtuous. They want to do right. They want to do good by the environment. They want to do good to each other. I believe in the human spirit. And that human spirit has been turned against itself, ironically, by buying into this lie, because buying into it will lead to, human poverty and really worse outcomes.
Yeah, and so let's talk about some of those lies. And in particular, one of them, they will say that the constant production of fossil fuels is bad for the environment. You touched on that. What is the truth here? That there was that ridiculous movie Frack Nation, I think that's what it was called. And it was like, oh, my drinking water now has, petroleum in it. What is the truth here?
So, as you recall, they started by calling it global warming. They rebranded it to be climate change. But ironically, far more people have died in history because of extreme cold than extreme heat. Now that we have a scientifically honest administration in the White House, and Chris Wright is really doing a yeoman's job as energy secretary to expose real science behind climate. You've had groups that have used bad science, very small data sets, really bad sampling to make a political point, because it sure as heck is not a scientific point.
Yeah, and so can you just build that out really quick? 1 minute remaining. So tell us more about the evidence we have for the last 200 million years. How do we know that, what you just said? Because that's a contention that's thrown at me all the time on college campuses.
Well, we have great geological data that is exemplifying, the nature of the atmosphere for that period of time. And, in times of high CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, the planet's gone through sort of a tropicalization period. And we're kind of seeing that now, which leads to more abundant food supply, actually a greening of the planet. And so all of this is evidenced in the geologic history. It's really pretty indisputable.
Edward, I want to take a step back here and just say, so you're a veteran of the oil industry. You started your oil business, Prairie Operating Company, which is traded on the NASDAQ during Joe Biden. How has running your oil business been different under President Trump versus Joe Biden?
This is where the illusion shatters. The so-called clean future rests, not on innovation, but on subsidies. Without government lifeline, solar and wind collapse under their own inefficiency and low density. Yet we are told it is salvation. We are told it will replace what powers our lives. But history and physics say otherwise. Fossil fuels brought longer lifespans, prosperity, and the escape of billions from poverty, while the narrative of green utopia hides the truth of rationing, scarcity, and control. What is sold as virtue is in fact regression to a colder, hungrier world.
Well, going back to when we started the company, everybody told us that we were crazy because we weren't going to need any more fossil fuels by 2030. So I was an absolute idiot for starting the company in Biden's America. Fast forward to today, and I think we've got a much more sober, true attitude coming out of the White House. We'd like to see some real policy changes as an industry to promote American energy over OPEC oil, because we are the largest manufacturing industry in the United States in terms of value. We employ over 10 million Americans, a lot of blue collar workers, mostly blue collar workers, earning 84% above private sector wages. So, we're big fans of this administration telling the truth about oil, but we need some help as an industry to really promote production in this country.
Yeah. So what does that look like? What would the ideal portfolio or sequencing of decisions look like?
Great question. I think that there's a lot that the administration can do with respect to federal lands and federal leasing. Where we are in Colorado, for instance, there's a significant amount of federal land. Yeah, and offshore and in Alaska. So that together with EPA policy on ozone and emissions that could really use a lot of work. And I think they're working on it, but we are an impatient bunch, and we'd love to see it all happen a little faster.
Yeah. So, in this pro energy agenda is incredibly important. How much does this differentiate state by state? I mean, Colorado's a nightmare for a lot of different ways. The environmentalists have tried to get rid of exploration on the western slope. I don't know if they were successful, but they've tried for a long time. And what can the federal government do in addition, not just executive orders, but to increase production? But do you guys in your business, do you want more production? Because wouldn't that also drive down the price? So how do you reconcile that? More exploration, more production with the price of oil? Because if it goes down too low, then there's no incentive for you guys to keep exploring.
Well, it's a really interesting topic because, as much as President Trump would like lower oil prices, the reality is that oil prices are really at a historic low when really adjusted for inflation. So if you factor in sort of the shale boom that's allowed us to become producers of 13 million barrels a day or so of energy, that was driven at really higher prices to today. There's been about $20 of inflation built into oil prices. So oil near $60 is really oil near $40 going back 20 years. So, that's a really important thing to understand. The other really important thing to understand is that, most of the oil produced in this country is now shale. And shale it's not what you sort of imagine on television, where we drill a well and you see a gusher of oil and you walk away for 30 years and you keep producing that oil at the same rate. Shale is really a resource of very high decline. So we produce about 60% of the reserves from a shale well in the first 3 years of production with a hyperbolic decline. So just the effort to maintain production flat is a real huge challenge in the United States. And we're quickly running out of economic drilling locations to do that at these types of prices. So the idea that we can really create, a lasting, tenable American energy independence for the next 50 years at $60 or less oil is really not correct. So we're really in a battle with OPEC, and OPEC still holds a lot of cards around total global production. But I and everyone in this industry have been trying to predict oil prices for as long as I can remember. And the one thing I know for a fact is we're always wrong. We've always been wrong in predicting. But economics, as you point out, have a way to right production. Low oil prices create high oil prices because people, stop producing as much oil.
Edward Kovalik, thank you so much. Oilfacts.com. We need to dominate the world with energy. We should be drilling more, we should be exporting more, and we should be exploring more if we want to dominate the AI space. And we have to refute all these lies. That's why I want people to check out oilfacts.com. The global warming, environmental, pollutes your drinking water. It's all a bunch of BS. Oilfacts.com. Edward, thank you so much.
Artificial intelligence is being hailed as the next revolution, but revolutions run on power. And without fossil fuels, the dream collapses. Data centers demand electricity at levels beyond imagination. Training one AI model consumes energy equal to powering entire neighborhoods. Yet the same voices pushing AI growth chant for the end of fossil fuels. The contradiction is staggering. You cannot have both a digital future and a fossil-free one. This is why energy is no longer just about cost. It is about freedom, about whether America can remain at the front of the next great technological leap or be throttled into weakness by false promises. As this conversation closes, the stakes are clear. America faces a choice: to lead or to fall, to dominate energy or surrender to foreign powers. The lies of green politics have blinded millions. But truth cannot be hidden forever. Oil remains the foundation of industry, of defense, of prosperity. And without it, independence vanishes. Those who control energy control the future. And right now the battle is raging. The narrative will tell you one thing, but reality speaks louder. And today reality is knocking at the door. It is time to decide whether we chase illusions or embrace power.